there's too much like, oh, my rep is great, or, we value persistence and grit, or, we value high volume outreach. It's like you can value those things, but you can still learn from the experience. Like, where did you miss? Where did this go wrong? And then how do we make sure we don't do it again? Because mistakes and failures and all that stuff, they're perfectly fine if you don't do it again and again and again.
Hey everybody, this is Morgan J. Ingram, host of the SDR Chronicles, bringing you guys sales development leaders, sales leaders, sales development practitioners to help you perform better in your role and to help you get yourself out there to crush it. So today I have Jonathan with Pegasystems managing a sales development team, and he really wants to dive into this topic of how to really humanize your message as an SDR, because there's a continuous, I would say, messages and LinkedIn updates of SDRs just not doing the right thing. So we really wanted to touch on this, on how to not be that SDR who gets called out and how to actually have a proficient message. So without any further ado, I'm going to let Jonathan introduce himself further, and we're going to dive into the topic of the day.
Awesome. Thanks for having me on, Morgan. So my name's Jonathan, currently the SDR manager for Pegasystems North American enterprise team. We're prospecting into some of the biggest companies that everybody knows of in the country. In my career, I've managed SDR teams, everything from, high volume, make, 150, 200 cold calls a day, to super highly targeted stuff. And I'm really excited to talk about this topic because I think it's about time we dig into it,
Yeah, it's about that time. So number one, let's kind of dive into it. Why do you think SDRs are not humanizing their message and they're not getting as personalized as they can be?
Yeah, let's start with the most obvious thing. In your first sales role, in anybody, this includes me, right? Going way back now. It's hard because what's happening is you're learning this whole new skill set, this whole new way of doing things. You're going from oftentimes college into a first job, or maybe you've been doing something other than sales, and you move into your first sales job. And for some reason, it just doesn't translate, like how we talk to each other, why we, act a certain way when we're hanging out with friends, when we're talking to colleagues, and then suddenly when we're on a sales call or writing a sales email, we start to act differently because we're just not used to it. And there's a number of things I've helped people do in their career to really understand how to bring that normal, hey, I'm a human being vibe to the roles in SDR. I've typically found that's all it is, though. It's just people have this mindset when they get into sales, oh man, I have to act. And they think of how they got to act. And the best people get over that real quick. But there are some things you can obviously do to, speed that up. But I think that's where it stems from. If we were all veteran salespeople, I don't think this would be happening. The thing is, you got to start somewhere. So there's no way of skipping that step.
And is that up to the SDR to learn how to do that better? Like how to basically become that professional, or does it fall on leadership?
I think it's both, right? So as a rep and, now as a manager, I'm always constantly looking for how can I improve my game, not just as a manager, but doing outreach, right? I still do some outreach personally, and I think it's important to be on top of it. At the same time, some of the best things that I've learned and my reps have learned have come from management. So strategies, tactics, approaches to really help somebody, get better at that. So it's on both. At the end of the day, if you're working for someone who isn't able to help you down that path, you may be working for the wrong person. And that puts more onus on you in that moment, because it's not like your job and your quota go away. But if you are working for somebody who's trying to help you out, or your colleagues are sitting there trying to help you out, try some stuff, at least experiment a little bit. So it's on you, but ideally you're working for a manager who can help you out, and hopefully with colleagues who've been through the same thing and are willing to help you out.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good perspective. So let's break it down into the two avenues. If I am an SDR and my messages aren't getting responded to, I just got blasted on LinkedIn, what do I need to do to be better, right? Without leadership, without anything else, what do I need to be doing outside of work to get more humanized?
Yeah, I think the first thing is, so if this whole blasting on LinkedIn thing, you and I agree. I don't like it. I don't think you like it.
Not at all.
Like if I get a bad email, I never will put it on LinkedIn. I will sometimes reply to the rep and say, here's where you missed. Try again. Like actually, not in a mean way, but just like here's where you missed. This is why this isn't resonating with me. Come on, see what you got. And a lot of them reply with something better, right? So I think that's the appropriate way to handle it, is not to put somebody on blast publicly. So let's start with that. But say you did get put on blast, right? Almost every message, what happened is you missed something really important. Now, if you sent a template and you forgot to fill in the blanks, I mean, it happens. What I would do if I ever did that as a rep, if I forgot to fill in the blanks, is I would follow up with a really simple, like, my bad. You know, like, my bad. I meant to send this email. I'm totally sorry if the previous one came across, you know, the wrong way. Just something real simple. If it gets put on LinkedIn, whatever, ignore it. If you get like called out though, because a couple of these have been basically delete the rep's name and put it out there and tag the CEO type of stuff. You know, my response is, okay, I would actually huddle everybody around and be like, so what's going on here? Because, you know, one recently, everybody blew up over it. And if you read the whole chain carefully, you realize this guy had been pitched by this company, like literally taken a demo, looked at it seriously. And what he was upset over was that it had been hit back up like none of it ever happened by someone he didn't know. And the whole thing was completely out of context. And what's going on is, you know, if you go to Amazon, right, you see what you recently viewed, you click into a product, you see other things you might like, and you can sit there and spend all day buying stuff on Amazon because they're really good at recommending stuff. It's like they know you, right? That's the experience we expect in the world today. Right. So that's kind of what's going on. So if I get blown up on LinkedIn or one of my reps gets blown up on LinkedIn, I'm looking at it as, what could we learn from this? Where did we go wrong? Or is this person just crazy? And in most instances, there's something we can learn. There's too much like, oh, my rep is great, or, you know, we value persistence and grit, or, you know, we value high volume outreach. It's like you can value those things, but you can still learn from the experience. Like, where did you miss? Where did this go wrong? And then how do we make sure we don't do it again? Because mistakes and failures and all that stuff, they're perfectly fine if you don't do it again and again and again, if you learn from it. So that's the way I'd approach it. And in fact, I would follow up with that person with a heartfelt message, whether it's me, my rep, somebody higher up in the organization, and not respond to it, you know, necessarily that publicly, but handle it, you know, like you should as a professional. And maybe that person comes out and says, you know what, my bad, I really shouldn't have blown him up.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I don't think you can't have a consistency of mess ups, right? Like maybe every once in a while, hey, like that does happen, but you can't be the person who's consistently messing up. And I know that we had this conversation around like, hey, that I know it's exactly the message. We're like, hey, this was bad, and I was like, no. Well, my whole thing is, you know, at the end of the day, like I feel like when you're calling someone out, it is what it is. But like at the same time, like your reps could probably be doing the same exact thing. So it's like you can't be. I don't think the gusto and that people have, like they probably don't know that their SDRs are probably doing the same exact thing, or their salespeople are doing the same exact thing. So my whole thing is that, like as you said, like to reach out to that person and be like, hey, look, like this is the feedback that I have, and like knowing that that person is probably new to the industry and they probably don't know everything yet, right? And I think that's a part of it. That most reps just don't know that like they could be doing it differently. And so that kind of, let's go back to the leaders. So what can leaders be doing if they like are being told like, hey, this is what we need to do, and they're not actually focused on personalized messages? Like what can they be doing to help articulate that?
Yeah, so there's a couple different things. So let's talk about, you know, this sort of specific scenario first, and then I want to talk about what, you know, as a leader I like to do, what I've seen work in terms of management to teach people how to do this better. So first off, if somebody on my team gets called out, then obviously I want to, you know, have us or somebody address it, you know, personally to that person, and probably ignore it as much as possible online, because positive coming out of doing back and forth, you know. At the same time, look, I hire reps with experience. I sometimes audit what they're doing and what they're writing. And even though we are doing highly customized and personalized outreach, it doesn't mean it's awesome every time. You know, so experience doesn't always get you to where you need to be. It's experience doing the right thing. So we got to keep that in mind. I fully expect that there's a chance one of my reps could get called out someday. I hope they don't. It could be anybody. So beyond that, right, handling that little bit of what's going on online, there's a few things that I've done in my career that have really, helped my team out. And these work both in, where I am now, where it's super highly customized and targeted outreach. Like we'll customize almost every email sometimes, we'll customize every voicemail. To, like I said, I've been in places where you're making 150, 200 cold calls a day, blasting people with emails, just trying to hit them up, right? So beyond the generic like industry and persona and title things, what could you be doing, right? So look for things that become like person to person. So easy example, you went to University of Georgia, I believe.
Yes.
Right? Now, if I went to the University of Georgia or my boss went to the University of Georgia, that could be a good point. But if I know University of Georgia has a big football game this weekend, I went to the University of Hartford. Unless we're playing you, which Hartford doesn't even have a football team. You're laughing, but there's no point in mentioning it. And I see people do that where they're like, oh, they went to Arkansas, go Razorbacks. And I'm like, but you didn't, and you're not playing them. Like it's not relevant. So what common connections do you have? It could be some interest they have that you see on LinkedIn. It could be something online that you find. If you find anything like that, that's a good way to personalize something or humanize it. Beyond stuff like that, right? If you can't find anything that beyond the basic research of they said this, they did this, or we have this connection, simple ways to get better at this. First off, practice your pitch and your objection handling and everything as if you were in a bar, right? Exercise with my reps, I still will, where I say, we're going to be on the phone, like, but explain what we do as if you're in a bar and somebody said to you, what is it that Pegasystems does? Explain it that way. If the person says, can you send me some more info on that? How would you talk to the person in the bar? I mean, I get it. They're probably not going to be saying, send me an email, but how would you talk about it that way? Because what happens is we get on the phone and we say, like, hey, we're the #1 provider of this and that and the other thing. And if you're in a bar, that person's just going to roll their eyes and turn around to the person the other way and ignore you all night. But if you said, we do this really awesome thing that you wouldn't believe, and, Pegasystems, we're always talking about, we actually have AI that works. We have robotics. Our stuff is, like it does amazing things for you to let you focus on the real work at hand, right? You're going to talk about it a little more that way than being like, we're the #1 BPM provider in, the financial services space. Like nobody cares. So talk about it that way. That's a big thing. In terms of writing emails, my favorite practice, everybody should do this. My favorite practice is to try writing emails on your phone. I don't mean like you're on your phone. I mean, pull out your iPhone, right? Pull this thing out and write some emails on it. Because what's going to happen is you're going to write them totally differently. And reps always kind of chuckle at this until they start to do it. And they're like, whoa, wait a sec. These are coming out very different. Because it's a different format. The screen is much smaller. The way you're used to writing on your phone is different. And you'll start to write a more personalized human type of message instead of, like I said, we're the #1 BPM provider, all that stuff.
Yeah.
Way. And it's an incredible lesson just to get people to write a little bit better email.
No, I love that. And I think that it's extremely important. I tell all my reps that at the end of the day, please don't write a novel, because that's how everyone wants to treat it. They're like, I have to put as much value into this email as possible. And that's actually not the case. It's like, you got to think about okay, so where's the attention of the people? And I think I read a stat, 80% of emails are read through mobile. So it's like when you write an email, you have to think about it on the mobile, not on the laptop. No one's sitting here like, dang, I can't wait for 20 SDRs to email me today. It's just not going to happen. So you always have to think about mobile, people are on the move. People are even starting to now not use laptops at all and only use their phone for work. So you have to consider the fact that this is on the mobile. So I don't know kind of how you do your personalized things, but I say that, hey, first paragraph needs to be personalized. Second paragraph needs to be something of the value prop of your company. And the third paragraph is the ask, because at the end of the day, they're only going to, most people are going to get the notification, read the first 4 sentences or the 3 sentences that they have in that blurb, and they're going to decide whether or not they're going to open it or they're going to delete it. So it has to be something personalized. And if it's something generic, then they most likely will delete it.
Yeah, there's a couple general rules I have for that. First off, what's the headline? You know, so if at the end of the day you do all these things, what's the headline? What's the thing they're really interested in? That should be sentence 1 or sentence 2. So maybe sentence 1 is describing the typical problem or situation. Sentence 2 is hooking them into, well, here's the sort of thing you might be able to get about this, right? Rule number 2 I love, 5 sentences or less. You can write almost any email in 5 sentences or less, even in prospecting emails. People think I'm nuts when I say it until I actually break it down and we do it. The last rule, talking mobile, write the email, send it to yourself. 2 scrolls. You got 2 scrolls with your thumb. If you can't read the whole thing in 2 scrolls, it's too long. Even if it's 5 sentences, if it's 5 really long run-on sentences, they may not get through the whole thing. So those are the basic rules I've found. If you want to get, what's the headline? Like, what's the problem? What's the headline? That's your biggest thing. 5 sentences or less, ideally. 2 scrolls. You have a decent shot at getting that person's attention. If they follow up with you, that's when you can write them the novel. If they say, hey, I'm not ready to talk, but can you tell me more? That's when you have the opportunity to be like, well, here are the 3 key points and here are the things. And if this sounds interesting, can we connect?
That makes sense.
Too many people try and pitch everything up front. In reality, that your pitch, like your opening or your first email, think of it this way. It's to get you to open the door. It's not to tell them everything. It's to open the door. That's it. If you open the door, you can have the bigger conversation. If you don't open the door, it's going to get slammed in your face.
Right. No, I think that's really important. And I think, you know, there's multiple avenues to do that. So let's kind of dive into, you know, we talked about email, we talked about phone, thoughts on social, and even the kind of the rise of video. How are those helpful in that humanization of that message?
Yeah, this is something I've been looking at lately because a lot of people have been saying video, and it includes people I know who aren't in sales at all. You know, they're oftentimes small business owners who are trying to find clients. And they're saying, what's this whole video thing? Or they want to test it out. And what I found is the right market, it's something that could totally work, customized video to somebody. It's really there's 2 things happening there. So one is a hyper-personalization. Even if it's a 30-second video, it's obviously a hyper-personalization. And I've had this work on me, by the way. So this is part of where this is coming from.
Yeah.
And another person I looked into who uses it extensively, you know, it's just this 30-second, 90 way of connecting with somebody that text can't do, but it's also a chance for the person to get to know you. I've always said one of the hardest things about phone sales is the fact that you can't see the whites of somebody's eyes. So much is communicated right there on somebody's face. And the phone, that's what's scary about it for most people, is they can't see it. Learn how to read somebody's voice because, you know, when I pick up the phone, my voice tends to be very flat.
Yeah.
Very monotonous. I'm not on a sales call myself, so I'm not going to have this jovial, pleasant, I'm going to have a conversation with you. I'm like, Jonathan, what do you want, basically? And, you know, if it's a vendor and they're not any good, they're going to get shut down, right? So you've got to kind of be able to play off of that stuff, and it's hard. So that's what I like about video, is it does a couple of things. It gives you that personalization. It gives you the ability to send a really simple personalized message. You'd probably talk a little more normal to doing video than your emails, especially if you're early in your career. And then the second thing is, you know, that ability to connect as a human being, one-to-one. You know, it's a very different experience. And we're still, you know, we're visual people. We connect with people. I don't think in-person sales is ever going to go away. I just think we are shifting to more of an inside model, but person to person, that stuff's still big.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I personally use video, and when I was an SDR, and I found it super impactful. Even now as a manager, if I'm trying to get in front of somebody, I use video, and that's going to resonate with people because obviously for me, like, I can't really show my energy through email. And like, I need to do that. So the only way it's ever done is through video. Like, if I get them on the phone and I'm too fired up, they might like think I'm crazy. So the video at least allows me to have that personality and have that energy. And I've seen it pay dividends as an SDR, and I've seen it pay dividends on my own team where people are starting to use video and they're seeing like the results from it when they thought like, hey, like, how does a video actually help me at the end of the day?
Yeah, I'm not surprised one bit. If you're like, it's not really as applicable for us because we're oftentimes going after super high level people at huge companies, and the way that the way they respond right now is very different than, you know, if you're going after smaller businesses or startups or small business owners, you know, you've got a very different thing. But like I said, the funny thing is somebody using it on me worked at one point, and I was like, you know, that's pretty curious. So it can have applications outside of where you think it'll be successul. It can definitely work.
And that's what you really want at the end of the day. So definitely with that. And so with further kind of talking about this, what are resources that reps and leaders can read to get more information on how to be more accessible and have a more humanized message?
Yeah, so I'm going to recommend, I would say it's 2 books, but it's my favorite book ever on inside sales. It's by Art Sobczak, which is not spelled that way. Art, Cobczak, and the 2 books are How to Sell More in Less Time with No Rejection, volumes 1 and 2. The reason I love them is Art walks through every aspect of the sales process, and it's all inside sales stuff, but you can use his scripting techniques on any sort of sales conversation. And he walks through them like, here's the big picture, here's what you should be doing, here's how you personalize it. And then he'll say, you know, if you're going to ask a question about this, here are like 26 different ways of opening that question up or thinking about that question. And you realize this guy's not sitting there teaching you his methodology. He's teaching you fundamentals and then helping you customize it the way you talk and the way you think as you're going. It's 2 books I have referenced a decade, just over and over and over. I think it's the absolute best. If you're going to buy 2 books on the topic, it's the absolute resource on understanding how to write and think and talk in a better, more personal, more customized language in a way that suits you, right? Not just anybody or what feels right. You know, for your manager, that may not work for you, or for your peers, it works for everybody. You just got to find the snippets that work for you. That is my absolute favorite resource. There are, I'm sure if you know, like the same blogs everybody else reads, if you read HubSpot's blog, if you read, you know, there's a Trish Bertuzzi, there's a lot of these resources that are great. But personally, if I'm going to recommend one thing and one thing only, it's Art Sobczak's 2 books, you know, How to Sell More in Less Time with No Rejection, volumes 1 and 2.
Yep, that's awesome. That's a great resource. I've actually never heard of that before, so I'm figuring I'm about to go get it because you just fired me up about it. So I'm gonna go get it. We'll talk after. But yeah, definitely, guys, grab that resource. Sounds like a great one to read. And so, kind of moving forward to the next question, what do you think about, you know, people that are going to events? You know, how can people at events even be, you know, more active, right? How do people go about that? Because sometimes SDRs at events are actually super reactive. At least when I go to events, sometimes they're just sitting at the booth waiting. Like, how can they proactively get in front of these people?
It's the whole, going back to the whole, how would you talk about this at a bar thing, right? An event, guess what? An event is awesome because you have a bunch of people who had likely paid to show up at an event and now have dedicated time to be at this event. So I've gone to events, both, you know, working for a company as well as someone who wants to either check out stuff or meet people in my industry or in a certain area of business, or even for fun, right? We've all done these sorts of things. You might go to shows. I've been to, you know, entrepreneurship and startup events that are pretty awesome. And I've just learned, like, connect with people, talk to them. You know, they're normal. A lot of people are looking around and they're very passive. Right? You can't be the passive person waiting at your booth. You know, the only people who can be passive are the big names that everybody wants to go check out. So you and I, we don't work at Google. Right. We don't work at Apple. People aren't walking up to our booth as much, right? And we both have things going on. We've got things like AI and robotics that people want to hear about. Yeah. You know, you're all about account-based marketing, which, I mean, working in the enterprise world is like a no-brainer for us, right? So these things are cool terms, but people aren't as into it. And so sometimes you got to walk up to people with that little bit of an intro, like, what's the hook, right? So if you got Team Terminus at an event, I would, you know, be saying hi to people and be like, hey, you know, we're an account-based shop. Could we talk to you a little bit about, or what are you guys doing for account-based? Can you tell me your story about that? And ask them a question about what they're doing, right? Don't just walk up to them and be like, hey, I got this iPad here and I could show you a 3-minute demo of what we do. You're laughing. People will do that. They're like, I got an iPad.
I'm laughing because I know it's true.
Yeah, and they do that. It's like, no, engage. Just be like, hey, you know, we do account-based, you know, like, what are you guys doing for that? Tell me, is that a word that's kind of popped up in your company? Even if they're like, oh, I'm in IT, I know nothing about that. The person next to them might be, you know, the VP of marketing, right? You don't know that. Or they might say, yeah, my VP of marketing's here. I think they're saying something about that today. Great, here's my card, tell them to come by. We're in booth, you know, 386, right? Just connect with people. Don't worry about the result. And actually, it's funny, the books I recommended to you, it's one of the biggest things he says, your focus is never the result. The reason it's called, you know, Sell More in Less Time with No Rejection is because you always have an offer at the end of it. It has nothing to do with whether or not you get what you want, right? So if somebody says I'm not the right person, oh, well, I mean, you know, anybody with you who might be interested in this, oftentimes it's these people, or they're like, I'm too busy, I don't got time. Be like, cool. What resource can you give them for them to check it out later? How can you connect with that person later and add value? I mean, what's tough to communicate to an SDR or an early career salesperson is that the best thing you can do is learn how to build pipeline, learn how to build relationships. Because if you can do that, you'll win over the long term. If you're always focused on hitting your number this month, your job just got 10 times harder.
Right.
So that's how I do it. Just how do you connect with people? What questions can you ask them that'll engage them and get them to talk to you a little bit and have a little fun with it? You're at an event, you're out of the office, you know, loosen up.
Yeah. Well, so that the theme of this all is loosen up.
It kind of is, right?
It really is, though.
At a bar, loosen up. I mean, like, the joke should be, you know, the joke is when, you know, you got the employee writing the email to their boss. It's like 17 sentences, and the boss sends one line like, hey, can you look at this? It's not like, can you do a wonderful job, you know, editing this document for me? It's like, hey, can you take a look at this and clean it up?
Right.
Like, if the VP talks that way in their emails, how should you be talking to them, right? Same way.
Yep. I love it. I love it. And, you know, as we're winding down this interview, kind of last questions here. So I guess kind of to sum it all up, we talked about loosening up. We talked about the humanization. So how can you have a great mixture of that templated message that you may have and also that personalized message? How do you determine that mixture to make sure that you're actually reaching your prospects in the right way, but also having enough volume to really hit the goals that you want? Yeah.
So my favorite thing in the world is to say, so you've got a 6-touch email campaign that you typically send with your you know, calls and leaving voicemails. My opinion is email number 1 needs to be the home run. Because if that person ever checks that email out, whether it's the first time or later on, and they see you put in your homework, the other 5 can be generic in the sense that you're targeting their persona, their title, their company, their industry, whatever it is. And if you have really good messaging on those other ones, that first one's the only one that needs to be the absolute customized home run. And that's where you just want to drop the things like, I saw you said this online, your company's doing this digital transformation, you're moving to this sort of system. Or it's I saw in your profile, you value X, Y, and Z. And, you know, there's a couple ways we might fit in with those sorts of things. Whatever it is, that's where you want that 1 or 2 hyper-personalized hooks to go in that first message.
Right.
All right. And then when you're calling the person, voicemail, this is what everybody hates to do. They're like, what do I leave for a voicemail? And I say, this is what I teach my team here. This is what I've taught every team. When you're leaving the voicemail, your goal is to get the person to not hit 7, which is delete if you don't know.
Yeah.
I always say, will they hit 7? So don't hit 7, right? And it'll just be like, hey, Morgan, reaching out because I shot you over this email. Here's why I think you'll be interested in it. 3rd paragraph's got this little thing on this. Check it out. If you're looking for it right now in your inbox, my name's Jonathan. My company's Peck. Take a look. If it looks interesting, just hit reply. Or if you really want to talk on the phone, give me a call at this number. Put your info at the end. Get the person to listen to you. Tell them, why is it interesting? What are they going to find? If you sent them a video, check out minute 34. You're going to hear this. If you send them a case study, page 3 has this on this, and because you said this on your LinkedIn profile, I think you'll find that interesting, right? That's the way to do it. And you can make it super generic. If you know every VP of sales is going to care about, you know, how do we make sure we don't burn through all our leads because you're doing account-based now, right? How do I make sure I warm up an organization instead of burning out my leads? Address that in your, where do you address it in your email, in the resource you sent over? Like, where do you do that? And that should be your hook and your headline. And that's the simplest way to, you know, humanize a voicemail. Too many people are like, hey, I'm Jonathan. My company's Pegasystems. This is my phone number. I mean, they hit 7. They already hit. I hit 7 on those. Actually, I don't hit 7 on those messages because I play them for my team and I say, "This is awful. Don't you ever do this."
Yeah. Cool. Awesome. Awesome. Well, Jonathan, I really enjoyed all the insight that you've given thus far. So I'm going to ask the last question that I ask every single guest that comes on the show. What is the one piece of advice that you have for an SDR as they enter into their new role?
Yeah. Here's my piece of advice. Play the long game. Play the long game. Don't like. You gotta think about hitting your quota. I get it. You've got a manager who's all over you. You're learning this new sales. You know, it's different. Play the long game, because here's the thing. You may or may not find out sales is great for you. You might want to move into operations or client services, or heck, get out of business altogether. But play the long game, right? Because here's the thing. Too many people try and figure out, how do I twist just enough arms right now to get my result? Or they'll say, I've seen reps do this where they're like, I make fewer phone calls because my emails are so good. And what I say to them is, if you have a pool of 200 accounts and you're really good at sending emails, what happens when you send all those emails to everybody and then next quarter you've got to reach back out to them? Everybody who responds to the way you write emails isn't going to reach back out to you because you already got them all. So focus on the long game. Focus on getting better. I would tell reps, you know, when in that company where it was 150, 200 calls a day, I told them you should be making as many calls as possible every day to learn as fast as you can, because that's when you're going to learn how to make fewer, better calls and write smarter emails.
Right.
In a place like here at Pegasystems, I'm telling all of them, when you're new, you should be here, not necessarily at the crack of dawn, but you should come in a little early, stay a little late. You should put in the extra effort every single day to learn something about what it is we do. You should learn about your customers, the industry, whatever it is. Play the long game, because careers are much longer than trying to get to that next promotion. And if you get to that next job and you're not playing the long game, what's going to happen there, right? Eventually, you're going to come up against the wall. So play the long game. Just focus on the long term and figure out what you got to do in the short term to help you, you know, be successful. But always have that in the back of your mind. It only takes one big, you know, screw up to ruin the next, could be a couple months, could be the job, could be, you know, years of your career. So focus on the right things for the long term.
Right. Yep. Well, Jonathan, I love it. That's a great last piece of advice. So as I always say, guys, keep dialing, and I'll see you guys soon.
Thanks for having me on, Morgan.